Having our paper here. My name is Alfred, and this is joint work with Christine Parlour and Kathy Yuan. So we want to think about liquid staking, and how does liquid staking work in general? Well, we all know that today there is these validator nodes that need to have a lot of ETH staked to verify and add new blocks to the blockchain. And a lot of this ETH that's being staked today comes from users who don't directly stake these tokens, these nodes, but who go through some kind of liquid staking protocol, something like Lido. And Lido pools the deposits from a lot of little people like me, and then stakes these tokens. And in return, these users get liquid staking tokens, so you get staked ETH tokens that you can use and trade and use across DeFi platforms. So this market is pretty big. So we see that liquid staking is growing a lot. So Lido is one of the larger providers in this space, but liquid staking is one of the largest DeFi applications. Okay, so we want to relate this a little bit to banking and think about what is the same and what is different than banking. So to combine a lot of small stakes and validate and vet these validators, that's very common to banks too, where we get together a lot of small deposits and invest in a company that's worthwhile. When we have demand deposits, so that there is withdrawals, you can ask for your staked ETH back to get the ETH out. So that is also similar to banking, where we can go to the bank and demand our deposits and get them as cash out. So similarly to banking, we also have a sequential service constraint, which means whoever submits their redemption request first gets served first. And we know from banking that this can create all kinds of interesting situations like bank runs. And we can also here see, similar to banking, where people see if there's a queue forming outside of the bank branch, we can see here the redemption queue on chain and see how this is going. What is new is that there's a market for that staked ETH. So if I have a deposit in JP Morgan and I cannot trade my JP Morgan deposit to Katrin and sell it to her, and for whatever market price, that's not possible. Deposits are not tradable, but the staked ETH are tradable. So that's kind of new, and that produces some information too that's out there.
Sorry.
Yes?
A completely naive question. The money in the pool, in the bank, they're using the money for something. In this case, is it being used, or what's going on?
Yeah, the money in the pool is used to stake on the blockchain and generate staking income.
So
yes.
if I demand it, there may not be availability.
The reason why a lot of people think this is risk-free, right? Because we put this into a staking node, it's on the blockchain, everybody thinks that the staking protocols are completely risk-free. But it's actually not. There's significant operational risks associated with staking as well that we haven't seen so far. There's not been a disaster, but it's fairly young. We haven't seen a lot of banking disasters in the last year, but that doesn't mean that bank runs don't exist. And let me talk a little bit about where these operational risks come from. So here is where a lot of these nodes, these validator nodes, actually reside on the blockchain. And we see that about 22% of all the validator nodes are on AWS, Amazon Web Services. And there's a lot on other cloud providers as well. So just think about the fun scenario where there is an outage on AWS, and all of a sudden 22% of the Ethereum nodes go offline. Now, this does not mean that the blockchain will halt, but it will mean that there is a lot of slashing. Why do these providers get slashed? Because if you don't show up when it's your turn to add a block, that's bad behavior and you get slashed. Moreover, if there's something in Ethereum that's called correlated slashing. So if you don't show up and a lot of other people don't show up at the same time, you get slashed more. And so now think about such a situation where there is this Amazon outage and you're a Lido stakeholder. You don't know, is Lido do all the Lido nodes run on Amazon? Do none of the Lido nodes run on Amazon? Maybe they all run on some other cloud. We don't know. We don't know how much Amazon is exposed to this. And now we can think of a situation that's similar to a bank run, right? So there's a rumor. We can see that a company has defaulted. Do we know if our bank has a loan to that company or not? We don't. So now all of a sudden we could be in a situation that would be very similar to a textbook bank run example. So there's a lot of these, why is this interesting beyond Lido? There's a lot of these tokenized deposits ideas floating around. Banks are thinking very strongly about tokenizing deposits onto the blockchain even, and think about being able to do that. There's some pilot programs in the BIS to allow interbank payments through tokenized bank deposits. There is a lot of, in Hong Kong, banks think about tokenizing deposits, I've read. So this has some obvious benefits, but there's also new risks, because now you have these tokenized bank deposits potentially being tradable. And that is something that hasn't happened before. So what effect will these digital deposits have on bank stability? So let me give you an example. So it's a weekend. Bob is a huge depositor with JP Morgan or with a bank and wants to buy a new Lamborghini or 5 new Lamborghinis, right? And Bob sells a bunch of tokens on the weekend on JP Morgan. And as with all these markets, with AMMs, we see there's price impact. So all of a sudden, the deposits from JP Morgan, the deposit tokens from JP Morgan go to 90 cents on the dollar because Bob wants to buy a bunch of Lamborghinis, right? And so everybody else looks at this and says, why are deposit tokens from JP Morgan trading at 90 cents on the dollar? This could be because Bob is buying Lamborghinis, or this could be because something's wrong with JP Morgan, right? I better sell my tokens too. And so you could have a situation where this market noise generates bank runs. So in some ways, these digital deposits could be more stable, add more stability to the banking system, because now there's a secondary market. If I want to get out, I have another opportunity to sell, but it also could create more frictions. So these kind of bank runs have been analyzed in Diamondific and a lot of papers after that. The way we set this up is more similar to the Goldstein and Pausner paper, that is, in this global game settings, where bank runs are in response to fundamentals, and we analyze our paper in such a similar framework. So what is our timeline in our model? So we have some stakers who have some outside opportunities, and they decide whether or not to stake the deposits. The service providers go and fill up these nodes on the blockchain and generate revenue. At time one, as usual, there's these impatient depositors in this kind of model. Some people just want to withdraw their funds. And we learn something about the state of the fundamental. Maybe there was an power outage on Amazon Web Services, and we learn something about the world. And then people decide whether they want to sell their tokens or get out of their staking approach or run the bank or not. If they don't run the bank, there's day 2 and some rewards get realized. If they choose to run the bank, then the game ends at time 1. Okay, so we have a staking service of some random quality theta, and the investors receive some signal about the outside opportunities, whether they want to invest in the staking service or do something else with their money. And that's important because that determines the size and scale of the staking service. Then we have some other round of signals, and some impatient investors will withdraw, and the others who remain receive some kind of private signal about the state of the staking service. So everything is good, or there was a power outage, or something else is going on. So we can have two options to withdraw. We have the token market with informed liquidity providers. So I'll talk about that in a second. So you can sell your tokens if you want to get out, or you can go through a redemption queue. You can redeem your tokens with Lido and ask for your money back. So what is the staking service doing in our model? The staking service has to decide on an optimal treasury T, and there is a trade-off. The larger the treasury, the less you can stake on the blockchain, because the treasury doesn't really earn you any money. And but of course, if you have a larger treasury, you can pay off more depositors who want to redeem. So this is similar to a liquidity requirement or capital requirement in traditional banking. The staking service retains a certain fraction of every dollar that's staked and can raise additional external equity. More or less, they can go to the market and sell the equity share in the staking protocol and raise external financing. So the scale of the service, how big is the staking service, is determined by these outside opportunities that investors have. So the liquid staking, the depositors can use these tokens if they want to withdraw, either to join the queue and ask for redemption from the protocol, or they can go to the market and sell their tokens. Yes?
Does Lido actually not stake every ETH that it's given? Do they retain some?
Yes, they retain some as in a buffer. I can show you a picture in a second. Okay, so then in our model, there's costs associated with both. So there's a queuing cost if you want to withdraw, or if you go to the market, you get a price that may be below par value. You can get whatever is available. So if you look here, so here is a picture that shows you these withdrawal requests from Lido, and they vary considerably over time. We haven't seen a complete run on any of the staking protocols, but these vary over time. So to answer your question, Lido keeps a buffer that is used to repay these withdrawals, and you can see this buffer also varies over time, as you can see here. So that's kind of the liquidity that Lido keeps. So the withdrawal is also not instant, so these are the fulfillment times for the withdrawals. So you can see here that this varies a little bit over time as well. So withdrawal, if you want to redeem your tokens with Lido, it's not instant. There is a considerable waiting time that depends on how many other people want to withdraw. Okay, so what we're interested in is in events, and again, this hasn't happened to Lido, but we're interested in bank runs, right? So what happens if the withdrawals are greater than the treasury and the amount of money that the staking protocol could potentially raise? Yes?
In your model, the price in the market
is endogenous, endogenously determined. I'll talk about that in a second. So the withdrawals are driven by these outside investment opportunities, and the volume of redemptions is endogenously determined by the stakers. They are rational about that. Okay, so as usual in these kind of bank run models or in these global games models, there is an action that you can choose strategically. So either you withdraw early or you withdraw late. And you think about, of course, what is everybody else doing, and everybody else's strategic decision faces into my decision. And then there's different payoffs depending on whether there is a bank run or if the protocol stays alive. Okay, I don't want to bore you with the math, but essentially if the protocol stays alive, then you get your share of whatever this fundamental theta here is going to pay off. Okay, so how does the market work? So there's a downward sloping demand curve for these tokens. There is a certain willingness of these market makers here. So this gamma here, how much does the price reduce demand? So there's a certain willingness to absorb supply from the market. It's not perfectly elastic. There's a noisy demand shock to this redemption queue. So there's some uncertainty about that market price. So the price of the market is determined by market clearing, where market makers rationally set the price such that the demand plus this random noise here, so that's Bob selling his Ferrari, buying his Ferrari here, equals aggregate sales. Okay, so we do see that in practice the price varies quite a bit. So this is the price of Lido. It's not always one-to-one. So if you want to sell on the market, then you have, there are times when you could face a significant discount to par value. So is this correlated with the redemption queue? So what we see here is the withdrawal requests are in red, and the staked ETH price, I just flipped the chart around so that it correlates nicer with the eye. We see there's some correlation, like here, for example, there were a lot of withdrawal requests, and you see that the price of staked ETH at the same time actually drops a lot. So the market is learning from the redemption queue, and we do that in our model too, where the market makers observe two things. So the liquidity providers in the market who set the price, first of all, get a private signal about the value of the fundamental, but they also see the redemption queue, and they see what the market price is. So it's all endogenously determined what the price is going to be. Now, the protocol, if there is a bank run, could also go to the market, private market, and sell equity in the protocol. Why? Because the protocol keeps a certain fraction, 1 minus alpha, as fees. And so that's almost like an equity claim, and I can go and sell this future claim to investors in the market. And we model that there is a certain haircut here of that sale, or we can think about that a probability that I'm able to meet the buyer for my protocol, and then I sell the equity stake of the protocol and at the market price P. So we come up with a standard kind of global games framework equilibrium, where we think about the optimal decision of a depositor to withdraw or not withdraw money at the time based on their information set. The traders submit an optimal demand curve, given their signals, given how they see the queue, and given what they see in sales orders. The market clears, this liquidation value is determined, and everybody's beliefs are rational about what everybody else is doing and what everybody else is coordinating on. So in those kind of monotone equilibria, we typically come up with a threshold equilibrium. So if my own signal is below a certain cutoff G, then I want to withdraw my money and run the bank. If my own signal is above a certain threshold, I will stay with the protocol and keep my money invested. So I should have done this disclaimer at the beginning of the paper, because right now you're all probably very excited what the solution looks like. And the sad part is that the math is still a little bit in flux on the paper, and I don't have any super exciting results yet, so this is very new, and we're still working on this. So I can tell you a little bit where we're going and what we will do. So we have a solution here. We're still, as I said, it's still a little bit in flux, but we can determine the optimal run threshold from the following condition, that the marginal token holder would be indifferent between early and late withdrawal, understanding what the payoff functions are. So using that, given the endogenously determined price, you can figure out what the optimal run threshold is. So we will go ahead and figure out the probabilities of a protocol failure given this optimal run threshold and given all the random variables. So let me skip that. So what we will consider, so this is how the solution most likely looks like. So if the noise, and that's typically in this global game frameworks, that you assume that the noise of the individual signal goes towards 0, then you can determine this optimal run threshold G, which shows up in this equation here, that again is the optimal trade-off for the marginal token holder, whether to stay in the protocol or run it. So we have some early results. So interestingly, the question, does Bob create any damage to can Bob create a bank run by buying 5 Lamborghinis on the weekend? That is a question of sigma xi here, which is the noise in the price, in the token demand. So that could be like if there's a lot of uncertainty about a lot of people like Bob who want to buy, sell tokens on the weekend, this could certainly distort the price. So does this increase the chances of a bank run? And the answer is maybe. So there's certain ranges of the parameters where a lot of market noise can be destabilizing for the protocol, and there's other parameters where this could actually be increasing the stability of the protocol. So the market in our model allows us to look at 3 interesting things. So it allows users to redeem ETH. It provides information about the stability of the service, and that could be beneficial. But it could also be destabilizing if you think that the price of ETH staked ETH drops because somebody just wants to buy a bunch of luxury cars. So it provides a benchmark pricing for the service, for the amount of money that the staking service can raise when they sell their equity as well. So overall market noise can be stabilizing, and this is a little bit concerning if you think about this not only from the perspective of Lido, but if you think about this from the perspective of the broader banking system, where tokenized deposits that can be freely traded could potentially destabilize market prices. Okay, so let me just conclude. So what we want to do and what we are working on at the moment is to clarify this aspect of adding the market, how exactly and what the channels are, and how much market noise will destabilize the stability of these type of protocols. This is something new in banking that we have not seen before because the bank deposits were not really tradable. And so we hope that we can add something to the literature in DeFi as well as the literature in traditional banking. And I'm very sorry that I don't have any fancy comparative statics yet. They're still in the works as our math is still a little bit in progress. Okay, thank you very much.